going on, guys? Arekkz here, and welcome back to another Monster Hunter World video, and the next episode in my weapon workshop tutorial series. This is the series where I go over absolutely everything you could possibly want to know about a given weapon, right from the basic moves available to you, all the way up to the main most efficient combos you should be using, and some overarching weapon theory. If you guys missed last week's episode, then I went over how to use the light bowgun, and over the course of the next few weeks, I'll be putting together guides to cover each of the 14 weapons in Monster Hunter World, and today we're continuing that by turning our attention to the last of the ranged offerings, the Heavy Bowgun. The Heavy Bowgun is the polar opposite to its light counterpart. Where the light bowgun offers speed, mobility, and a plethora of status and elemental options, the Heavy Bowgun is much slower, but also much more powerful with less recoil and typically larger ammo capacities. With access to more damage-focused ammo types, it really does excel at dishing out those big numbers, and with the addition of 2 new special ammos introduced in Monster Hunter World, there are also some rather interesting ways to use this weapon. In short, if the ranged playstyle is something that interests you, but you want something that hits a little harder, perhaps you've come over from one of the heavy hitting melee options, then Heavy Bowgun might just be what you're looking for. Now, before we dive in and go over the basic moves of the weapon, there's a couple of things you need to understand first. To begin with, I'm going to once again very quickly recap critical distance. If you saw the light bowgun tutorial last week, or the bow tutorial a while ago, then this will be your third time hearing this, but since it applies to each of the ranged weapons, it's important that I go over this for anyone picking this up. Critical distance is essentially the distance you want to maintain in order to ensure you're doing the most damage possible. If you're outside of the critical distance, you will do less damage, and if you are too far out, in other words out of range, then your shots won't land at all. So good use of this weapon will require that you maintain critical distance at all times. When aiming your weapon, a reticle will appear on screen. If you're too far out, then it will say out of range, and quite simply, your shots won't land. Meanwhile, if you move forward a little, then you'll have the standard wider reticle, and while this will see your shots land, you're still not doing optimal damage. Move a little closer again, and a second circle will appear inside the first reticle, and this is critical distance. Now it's important to understand that for bowguns, both light and heavy, different ammo types have different critical distances. So something like spread shot, a close range ammo type, naturally requires you be much closer. Meanwhile, a long range ammo type, say pierce shot, will see you put much greater distance between you and your target. But since the on-screen reticle is your visual indicator, it's really not difficult to adjust your placement on the fly. Furthermore, the Heavy Bowgun, much like the light bowgun, also has a relatively simple moveset, as you'll see in a moment when we go over all the basics. It's not a combo heavy weapon, you'll largely be pointing, shooting and repositioning, but your complexity comes from your ammo choices and the way you spec your build. There will once again be a dedicated section in this video that speaks about ammo as well as mods, but ultimately these choices will influence how you play, where you stand, how you move, etc. There are lots of things to consider here, and it's all part of what makes the bowguns fun. So, with all that in mind, let's first begin by going over how to use this weapon, and then we'll tie it all together by talking about ammo types, mods, skills, and how you should use it in combat. If you're familiar with the light bowgun, then the moves are largely going to be the same here, bar a couple of minor differences. First things first, you can either press R2 or triangle to draw your weapon, and then pressing R2 with your weapon drawn will see you fire your currently selected ammo type. Remember that unlike bow, which needs the coatings to be applied, bowguns don't need the ammo to be loaded. You simply scroll to the one you want, and then begin firing. Holding down L1 and pressing either triangle or X will allow you to scroll through your different ammo types, or you can press up and down on the D-pad to do the same thing. Either one works, so use whatever feels comfortable to you. Holding down L2 will bring up the aiming reticle. You'll use this a lot since it not only allows you to aim and be more accurate with your shots, but it's also your visual indicator for critical distance. And when you factor in that bowgun has different critical distances based on the ammo you're using, it's nice having this here to keep yourself in check. Pressing triangle will then allow you to reload your currently selected ammo. Meanwhile, holding down triangle will allow you to reload all ammo in order. So again, if I empty out a few different ammo types, when holding down triangle, it'll reload my currently equipped one first, and then begin reloading from top down. Bear in mind, this animation will take longer, but it's a good thing to do in between engagements or when you have a window where you're not doing damage. Pressing triangle and circle will allow you to perform a melee attack. This is an impact attack, meaning it can KO monsters if done to their head, but in truth, you're not really going to be running around meleeing monsters left, right and centre with this weapon. So this is generally speaking more useful for hitting stunned teammates or knocking back small monsters. That being said, it does still do a fair amount of damage, all things considered, so if your team were working on a KO and you happen to be close by, then sneaking one of these in won't hurt. It just won't be your main priority. Now where the heavy and light bowguns differ are these special ammo options. Where the light bowgun has access to Wyvern blasts, the heavy bowgun has access to 2 different options, Wyvern Heart and Wyvern Snipe. Pressing circle will load the special ammo in question. The animation is a little lengthy, so if you're going to use this, try to do so in a time you're not going to be hit. Consider planning ahead and pre-loading for that moment. When crafting your bowguns, your special ammo type is listed here. Typically, weapons in the iron tree have Wyvern Heart, meanwhile weapons in the bone tree have Wyvern Snipe. But what's the difference? Well, Wyvern Heart is essentially the machine gun mode. You load it, and then when you begin firing, initially your damage starts off low, but it very quickly ramps up to the point where you're just unloading bullet hell into the monster's face. As you use it, the special ammo meter will begin to deplete, but the nice thing about this ammo type is that you don't have to use it all at once. You can fire some, unload it, and then go back to it later. And likewise, if you use it up and it's recharging, you can also use it when it isn't fully charged. Just keep in mind, you can only use it while you have meter in this gauge. And once it's out, it'll refill over time. This is a nice damage option, and if you really want to have some fun, throw on the impact mantle and use this on a monster's head, and you'll be seeing KOs left, right, and center. Meanwhile, the Wyvern Snipe, again, it needs to be loaded like the other one, but with this, once it's ready, holding down L2 to aim will see you go into a prone sniper position. With this, you have one shot, and the shot pierces the target, dealing some initial damage, then shortly after, those shots will explode. Now, good use of this ammo type comes in understanding the best way to use Pierce, since the ammo type will pass through a monster, and the follow-up explosions explode as many times as you landed a hit. You want to be shooting down the length of the monster to get as many hits as possible, head to tail or tail to head. Doing so will mean that this ammo hits multiple times, and then you'll get the most bang for your buck from the follow-up explosions. However, unlike Wyvern Heart, this ammo can only be used when the meter is full, so once it's used, you need to wait until it's fully recharged. Both of these have value, however I will say that Wyvern Heart is a little more general use and more forgiving, meanwhile Wyvern Snipe can dish out some nasty damage, but its use is a little more situational if you really want to make it work. Then finally, the last thing to note is that once again, you can press X to roll with this weapon. No fancy slide dash like the light bowgun, and also your roll is much slower, but you can use this to dodge incoming attacks, and also as a means to close the gap between you and the monster, since moving with this weapon is much slower. Keep in mind that while you can roll in between shots, you can't roll mid-reload, so if you're going to reload, don't do it if the monster is charging at you. And that's pretty much it for the basic moves, so let's very quickly go over aerial and sliding moves. Sliding down a hill and pressing R2 will allow you to draw into your weapon and begin firing. Meanwhile, sliding down a hill and pressing X followed by either R2 or triangle will see you first jump, and then follow that with a melee attack. Now this will do mounting damage if the attack connects with the monster, but more importantly, if you remain still for a moment after landing this attack, you'll go directly into a reload. So if you've been fighting and you then slide jump into this attack, it allows you to land, reload, and then very quickly get back into the action. This is also a good option if you have a slow reload time on a particular ammo, since this can help speed up the process. Additionally, jumping off a ledge with your weapon sheathed and pressing R2 or triangle again does the melee attack into reload, but jumping off a ledge with your weapon drawn and pressing R2 will allow you to fire, and this is actually a good move to use to compensate some of the higher recoil ammo types. So if you're firing something like recovery ammo that has say +4 recoil, then this can actually be a good way to compensate for that. And of course, jumping off and pressing triangle will again do the melee attack. As for runnable walls, sadly no flashy move here, so quite simply running and jumping off the walls and again pressing R2 or triangle does the melee slap into reload. So, now that you have a basic understanding of how the weapon plays, it's once again time to talk about the most important thing, your ammo. As mentioned, ammo is what will ultimately influence the way that you use this weapon, and it's where the depth begins to reveal itself. For the purposes of this tutorial, I've again grouped the ammo types into 4 different categories: raw damage, elemental damage, status, and support. When crafting a bowgun or inspecting it from your inventory, if you click L3, you'll get a list of all the ammo types it supports. Within this table, you can see the default ammo capacity, the shot type and recoil, and also the reload time. You'll also notice these 2 small icons. The first one, rapid fire, doesn't apply to heavy bowguns, that's something reserved for the light bowgun, but the auto reload types, quite simply, these ammo types will reload themselves instead of requiring you to press a button to do so manually. Now as for the ammo types themselves, under the raw damage category, you have normal, spread shot, pierce, sticky, slicing, cluster, and wyvern. Normal is your bog standard ammo type. The higher the number, the more powerful, and this applies to all ammo types, so normal 3 is more powerful than normal 2, which is more powerful than normal 1. Typically you'll use type 2 and 3, and then type 1 will be your base for crafting if you need to make more ammo in the field. In between all of the other fancy shot types you have, normal and spread shot ammo will be your bread and butter. Normal if you want a little bit more range, meanwhile spread shot ammo is more like firing a shotgun. Considerably shorter range, fires in a wide spread, but it's a great damage dealer, and also incredibly good at breaking parts. However, on top of that, you have pierce, the long range ammo type. To get the most out of this, you want to be firing down the length of the body, so while it's a good ammo type, it'll require a little bit more positioning to use effectively. Sticky, this is a powerful ammo type that sticks to the target and explodes shortly after. It also deals impact damage, so it can be used to KO a monster. Also, given the sticky ammo is considered an explosive ammo type, it ignores monster weak spots and deals the same damage no matter where you fire it. Slicing, this ammo type can be used to cut tails on a monster. When you fire it, it attaches to a part and then shortly after dishes out moderate slicing damage. Not the fastest thing in the world, but useful if you're gunning solo and want that tail cut. Cluster ammo types, now these are the big damage dealers, and you've more than likely seen these being used in Heavy Bowgun speedruns. It's a high damage ammo type that launches a shot into the air like a mortar, and upon landing it fragments into lots of smaller explosions. This ammo will send your teammates flying, so don't just fire this with reckless abandon. And then finally, Wyvern ammo. This charges up an explosive short-range blast and does very high damage, but again will also send your teammates flying, so don't use this unless you have a clear opening. When you fire this, you remain rooted to the spot for a short time, so really you only want to be using this when you have a genuine opening, or the monster is sleeping and you don't have a greatsword user around to do the wake up. Then, outside of raw damage, you have Elemental, Flaming, Water, Thunder and Freeze. However, in truth, this isn't really an ammo type that heavy bowguns excel at. Even for light bowguns, you have to work a little bit harder to really draw the value out of elemental ammo shots, but heavy bowguns have always been more about big, raw damage. So while your gun will support the odd elemental ammo type, it'll invariably do less damage than normal, so it's not something you typically use. On the status front, this is pretty self-explanatory. Poison, paralysis, sleep and exhaust. Much like with melee weapons, piling these shots into the monster will build up the abnormal status, and once it hits the threshold, the effect will proc. While light bowgun is definitely one of the best at applying statuses, the heavy bowgun also has this in its arsenal, and it's for sure something you should take advantage of. Paralysing or sleeping a monster provides you with great openings to then unload some of your big damage ammo types. Then finally, for support, you have recovery ammo, which can heal your teammates if you shoot them, armor and demon ammo, which are defense and attack boosts respectively, trank ammo, which can be used in place of trank bombs when capturing monsters, and finally, dragon ammo, which is like a bullet form of Elder Seal. It's a really slow firing bullet, so it can be a little bit hard to land, but it applies the Elder Seal effect. So in summary, when dealing basic damage, you'll typically be using normal and spread shot ammos with the addition of those high damage, more specialized ammos like Cluster or Wyvern, given the correct opening. Then alongside that, you can take advantage of the supported stated ammos to control the monster in combat and provide further opportunities for big damage. Now, once you've got your head around the ammo types for this weapon, it's also important to understand how to mod your bowgun. When you visit the smithy and scroll down to the customized bowgun option, you'll have the ability to add mods to your weapon. Now, mods are used to change the default properties of a bowgun, and the number of mods you can apply is tied directly to the rarity of the weapon. Bowguns of rarity 1 and 2 can apply 1 mod, bowguns of rarity 3 and 4 can apply 2, and bowguns of rarity 5 and above can apply 3. For the heavy bowgun, all 6 mods apply here, so if you saw the light bowgun tutorial last week, then the addition this time around is the shield. Additionally, a mod can be applied more than once if you want to amplify that particular effect. First up, recoil suppressors. This reduces recoil for certain ammo types, and while the game initially displays a table on the right with words like low, average and high, in truth that isn't especially descriptive, so if you click L3, you'll get a more useful numeric breakdown. Recoil affects the physical kickback of your weapon. When you fire a shot, the higher your recoil, the more kickback you get, and different ammo types have different recoil. The recoil will range from +1 to +4, and +4 is very noticeable and will have a serious impact in gameplay, but +2 is the one you want to focus on really. +2 and below means you're generally speaking able to move and shoot at the same time. However, keep in mind that heavy bowgun is typically a more stable weapon, so while for light bowgun recoil is often a priority, for heavy bowgun you might find that a lot of your core ammo types don't actually require any additional recoil mods. Reload assist, this one is pretty self-explanatory. It speeds up your reload times for specific ammo. Now the heavy bowgun often has much slower reload times when compared to its light counterpart, so this may well be something you look into, depending on your ammo choices. Again, remember that you're typically mod based around your core ammo types, so think about them when deciding your priorities. Deviation suppressor, now this one is an interesting one and again often causes some confusion. The best way to describe deviation is that it ties directly into your reticle movement. When crafting a bowgun, it'll list the deviation level here. If the gun has no deviation, then you can't apply these mods, but if it has low or above, then you can use this to compensate. As an example, here is a gun with deviation and no deviation mods applied. As you can see, when deviation is at its lowest, it's possible to fire without the reticle moving, which does have its uses in combat. However, it's also important to understand that this does not have any impact on physical recoil. So even if your reticle doesn't move, if you still have really high recoil, it's really not going to be that useful in combat. So you should always aim to manage your recoil first, or think about your recoil first, and then consider your remaining options. You then have close range up and range attack up mods. These increase the attack power when firing at either close range or long range respectively. Close range mods would apply to ammo types like spread shot and normal, meanwhile long range would apply for things like pierce. The first one you apply actually provides a rather noticeable improvement, around 20%, meanwhile there are diminishing returns for subsequent damage mods, with the second adding 10% and the third adding 5%, so while stacking all three will, without question, provide you the greatest possible damage boost, I'd argue that provided you at least slot in the first one, you're gaining the most important benefit. On the topic of normal, note that it has a pretty generous critical distance, and if you fire at the outer limits, you won't see the benefit of the close range mod, so aim to use it a little bit closer to remain both at critical distance and take advantage of the mod. As a point of reference, usually about one roll away from your target is the optimal distance for the close range mod. Then finally, the other mod option exclusive to the Heavy Bowgun is the shield. This mod, when attached, will also guard for you, provided you're looking at the monster when the attack comes your way. Stacking multiple of these will give you a stronger shield. As an example, 3 shields can be used to block No Gigante's dive bomb with minimal health and stamina loss. You could still do that with simply one shield mod, but you would of course take more damage and stamina loss in the process. So think of it like trying to block with a sword and shield versus a lance shield. Furthermore, since you do have a shield on your gun, you can also use guard skills if you wanted to go for a really tanky setup. But to summarise this and give you some more clarity in your choices, the first thing you want to decide is what ammo types you're primarily going to be using. What's your main damage dealer? That will likely influence your weapon choice in the first place, but once you know that, throw on the base damage mod relevant to your ammo choice, and then look at the remaining options. Do you need to further manage your recoil? Do you want faster reload? Or can you afford to just stack more damage? There's a degree of personal preference here, so you'll need to play around and decide what best works for you. Now, moving on from there to talk about armor skills. If you're thinking of giving this weapon a try and you want some skill recommendations, then here are some pointers to get you started. First up, as always, this applies to every single weapon but your usual damage focused skills like attack boost, weakness exploit, critical eye, critical boost, agitator, maximum might, even peak performance. Any of those will provide value. However, in addition to this, much like for the light bowgun, 3 very important skills in further increasing your base damage output are normal shots, piercing shots, and spread/power shots. Depending on the ammo type you intend to use, let's say for example you're using a normal ammo type as your core damage dealer, then you should without a doubt be running with the normal shots armor skill. It provides a noticeable damage boost and will go hand in hand with any other attack focused skills you decide to stack. So one of these should, without question, be on your bowgun set. Furthermore, free element/ammo up for the bowgun. This increases your loading capacity, meaning you can load more of a particular ammo type, allowing you to shoot more before needing to reload. The focus armor skill can be used to speed up the rate at which your special ammos recharge, so if you want to make more frequent use of either Wyvern Heart or Wyvern Snipe, then this could be an option, and to pair up with that, special ammo boost will increase the power of your special ammo types, so if you wanted to build around those specifically, these 2 skills would provide great value. Another interesting skill, this is one I could have also mentioned in my light bowgun tutorial, but it's the set bonus for Xeno'jiiva's Divinity. For bowguns, there's a 25% chance that you won't consume ammo on shooting. Now obviously this is a random chance, but it does proc more than you might think, so this could be handy in making your ammo go further. If you decide that you want to run a shield on your bowgun, then keep in mind that skills like guard and guard up can also be used. These aren't your typical picks for bowgun, I'll admit, but given the shield you have access to, they're skills you can take advantage of should you want to. Potentially useful if say you're learning the bowgun for the first time and want to protect yourself a little bit. And finally, you can also run evasive skills like Evade Window or Evade Extender to give you more breathing room, especially when you consider that you move much slower with the heavy bowgun. Having more distance or iframes on your roll might just come in handy. Of course, there are some other options on top, but as a starting block, those are some good skills to pursue. Now finally, to round things out, it's time for another combat test, a chance to use the weapon in a hunt and give you the opportunity to see how everything we've just learned ties together. Today, we're in the arena hunting a high rank Anjanath, and I'm going to be using the Power Shooter 3 Heavy Bowgun. It's part of the Bone Tree, meaning it's a Wyvern Snipe type, but it also has access to a nice array of bowgun ammo types, including Cluster, Sticky, Paralysis, Sleep, and Normal 3. So for the purpose of this fight, Normal 3 and Spread Shot 2 will be my bog standard damage dealers, depending on whether I want to get close or not. Now I'd usually start off a hunt with a Sleep, but since my Paralysis ammo has Recoil 3, I'm going to start with the Paralysis and use the ledge of the arena to my advantage. These jump shots will allow for an easy way to manage high recoil ammo types, and while I don't get the Paralysis on the first clip, it's safe to say he's just one shot away. So, follow the Paralysis. This gives me an opening to rain down some cluster ammo and pile some sticky shots into his face. In truth, I could have been a little bit more efficient and just rolled up and used Spread Shot on his face instead, but I was having a bit of fun in the process. Anyway, now that's out of the way, the next thing on the agenda is Sleep. So piling Sleep shots into him, since it is the first one of the hunt, it won't take long to get there. And now that he's asleep, I can plant bombs and use this opportunity to line up a Wyvern Snipe. Now sure, there are other ways to get the wake up, but since Anjanath is tall, This is a good opportunity to get a full length snipe down the body. At this point, with the paralysis and sleep out of the way and my special ammo on cooldown, I'm going to go into general damage mode. So I'm starting with normal 3 to give me a little bit of distance, save me getting stomped by Anjanath when he's angry. Ideally, I'm working towards the flinch and the inevitable knockdown that usually follows him getting the flamey breath, at which point I'll then use that opportunity to close the gap a little bit more. Now I did get knocked around a couple of times here since I mistimed my rolls, but that happens in combat, so no big deal. You pick yourself back up, you heal, and you move on. Now given my rolls have put me a little bit closer to Anjanath, that gives me a chance to use Spread Shot 2 instead. This is great for breaking pots, and if I can get a good break on the face, then I'll get a flinch out of it too. Fast forward a little bit, but that's what I was working towards. Now that he's down, that gives me an opening to pile in some shots. Now, I rolled past him in this instance because part of me was going to see if I could get a cheeky Wyvern snipe down the body, and then the other part of me that was more sensible was like, there's not enough time for that, so instead I opted to just pile spread shot damage into his head. However, shortly following that, my cat put him to sleep anyway, so here is an alternative wake up option using your Wyvern ammo. And after that, the rest of the fight played out as normal, and then ultimately, I rounded it out with a spread shot to the face. But that, my friends, is pretty much it. That was a quick hunt to tie it all together. Hopefully this tutorial has been helpful. Be sure to keep it locked for plenty more Monster Hunter videos, and the next weapon workshop will be next Sunday. So until then, thanks for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.